Forget New Year, New You. This season is about slowing down, locking the doors, and cozying up at home with the one you really want to do nothing with. Your dog. After the holiday chaos, those quiet nights with a blanket, a podcast, and your pup feel like the reset you actually need. Ollie helps make those moments easier with fresh protein-packed meals made from real human-grade ingredients, so your dog can enjoy some quality comfort food too. Choose from 5 recipes and get a personalized plan for your dog's needs. Meals arrive perfectly proportioned with a scoop and storage container, so serving is fast and mess-free. And with Ollie's in-app on-demand health screenings, supporting your dog is easy, ensuring more cuddles for many years to come. Visit ollie.com/truecrime and use code TRUECRIME for 60% off your first box.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are the things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it, so your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Hey everyone, just a heads up that today's episode contains some very graphic descriptions of sexual assault. Listener discretion is advised. Frontman Jacob Hoggard was used to making headlines. Since forming the band Hedley in the early 2000s, the Vancouver-based singer has only grown in notoriety. Hoggard took 3rd place in the 2nd season of Canadian Idol in 2004. He used the momentum from that performance to release Hedley's first studio album in 2007. The group's poppy, piano-driven ballads sounded a lot like Maroon 5. Hedley found their footing on Canadian Top 40 radio. They drew in a young, enthusiastic, and largely female fan base. From there, the band took off with certified platinum hits in Canada. They received award nominations. They sold out a string of stadium shows across the country. But not long after the band's 6th studio album, Cageless, it all ground to a halt.
Multiple women have shared stories online in recent days accusing Hedley frontman Jacob Hoggard of sexual misconduct.
In early 2018, an Ottawa woman came forward to the press, alleging that when the band was on tour in 2016, Hoggard sexually assaulted her in a Toronto hotel room. We spoke to Judy Trin, now a reporter for CTV News, who broke the story of the Ottawa woman's allegations during her time at CBC Network. Judy told us that prior to this woman contacting her, there had been multiple women who had come out and said that they had been treated inappropriately by Hoggard, that he had made inappropriate and derogatory comments to them, but nothing criminal had come out, at least not at that point.
I was approached on Twitter, DM, by a woman who said that she had been raped by Jacob Hoggard. So that was my first involvement in the story. It was responding to this DM over Twitter involving an Ottawa woman who was 24 at the time. And what she said was that the rape actually occurred 2 years earlier in 2016. And so that's how my investigation began, finding out exactly what happened. And it was important at the time because you had all these women coming forward and there was a lot of smoke, but at the same time, there wasn't any fire.
Hoggard and his band Hedley were in town for a benefit concert, and the woman, who was 21 at the time, was volunteering at the event. She also happened to match with Hoggard over Tinder. The two exchanged messages through the app before agreeing to meet in person a few weeks later in Toronto at a hotel. Hoggard arranged for her travel, inviting her to meet up with him on the road. While the woman said she expected intimacy with Hoggard that night, she said the encounter quickly became violent and non-consensual. Here she is with her identity concealed, telling CBC News what she says happened.
He basically just kept holding me down, and anytime I I told him, like, I made it very, very clear that, like, I was not interested in it. And I was so uncomfortable. And I started crying. And he just kept, like, telling me that I was being a good girl and, like, petting my head. And then he basically forced me to have sex with him and held me down and forced me to anal sex with him. And without a condom, I definitely have nights where I think about it and I have nightmares. And I have times where it comes back and I, like, have flashbacks of his face and like him over top of me.
She said he repeatedly spat on her and degraded her.
Within 10 minutes of them being in this hotel room, her portrayal of what happened was that it was almost like a Jekyll and Hyde incident. He was previously sweet and endearing, and then suddenly he would just a switch flipped, and then he was violent, and he forced himself on her and that it was to the point where it was so violent that she was bleeding vaginally and anally. So there is that, but she was not naive. She knew there was going to be sex, but she expected there to be consent.
She didn't report the assault to the police at the time, but several days later she went to the doctor, and medical records indicate she mentioned being assaulted during the visit. Trin said she had another important piece of evidence which helped corroborate her story when she went to the press.
What she did have was she had a diary entry in which she wrote about him, about how she told him to stop, and he didn't. She had a medical report in which she sought a doctor for an STD test as well as a rape kit. She was concerned that there was vaginal tearing, and because she said that it was, in terms of the rape itself, she said it was he was violent, like he had actually pulled her off the bed by the legs and dragged her into the washroom, and that he had that she had told him stop, but that he didn't, and that he wanted to actually urinate on her. And although she told him, no, that's disgusting, and that was the only time that he listened to her, was that he didn't proceed with the urination. So there were all these details that she was able to provide. You don't know what happens inside that hotel room. You just have her version at that time. He flatly denied it.
When other women online began to talk about how Hoggard had been inappropriate with them, she took her story to the press. The Ottawa woman wasn't the only victim to come forward publicly. A teenager alleged that Hoggard had inappropriately touched her before she had turned 16.
What is interesting about these two cases was that both young women say that wasn't his initial personality. Like when they first encountered him over texting, he was charming. The 16-year-old actually is what's called a super fan. She had been to his concerts since she was 10, and she had probably been to 15 concerts. He actually met her parents. Her parents had his number. They would call him, and he would help arrange backstage passes and concert tickets.
When she turned 16, the legal age of consent in Canada, she and Hoggard started exchanging sexual messages. Hoggard said he loved her and wanted to share a life with her. In September 2016, the teenager agreed to meet with him again. Like the Ottawa woman, she said she met Hoggard at a hotel for sex. But she said the encounter quickly became violent. She alleged Hoggard raped her multiple times over an hour, despite pleas for him to stop. Hoggard's representation responded to the allegations.
He said it was consensual. He said through his lawyers at the time that he thought that they had a nice afternoon together, and basically that was it. And so he denied everything.
The media and the music industry were quick to react to these allegations, however. The bulk of Canadian radio stations pulled Hedley's music from the airwaves, and the band's management dropped the group less than a week after they surfaced. Hedley announced they would take an extended hiatus following the conclusion of the band's Canadian tour. The Juno Awards, Canada's version of the Grammys, pulled Hedley from the slate of performers in the 2018 awards. Fans and peers of Hoggard started to speak out. Hedley's former drummer, Chris Crippen, supported Hoggard's accusers in an interview with CBC News.
Female fans would walk up and he would say, hey, you fucking spots, how you doing?
According to Crippen, Hoggard shared unwanted explicit images of himself and women with his bandmates. He also sent emails with racist and homophobic memes to producers, managers, and bandmates.
Yeah, he's just this brute, hard guy to be around, you know. I was surprised at the severity of what we're dealing with now, of the allegations.
As Hedley wrapped up its 2018 tour, the band continued to deny the allegations, saying that they were unsubstantiated. During a stadium show in Brampton, Ontario in March 2018, Hoggard reportedly thanked concertgoers for standing by him while simultaneously making crude remarks between songs. It was only a few weeks later that Toronto police confirmed that its sex crimes unit was investigating. Then, 4 months later, in July 2018, Toronto police charged Hoggard with 1 count of sexual interference and 2 counts of sexual assault causing bodily harm. These charges were based on the allegations made by both the teenager and the Ottawa woman. In today's episode, we're looking into the case of famous former frontman Jacob Hoggard. We'll walk through the intricacies of his trial and how the Canadian court system dealt with such a high-profile case. This is Jillian in partnership with Law and Crime. You are listening to Court Junkie, episode 264. The Crown formally charged Jacob Hoggard in 2018, but his case didn't reach the courtroom until May 2nd, 2022. The court date was pushed back multiple times due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Hoggard pleaded not guilty to the 3 charges brought against him. While he didn't deny having sex with either of his accusers, he claimed both encounters were consensual. Because of the charges and due to Canadian law, Hoggard could choose trial by jury or judge. He selected trial by jury, and both cases would be tried together.
The Crown prosecutor definitely wanted the similar fact application, wanted those 2 cases tried at exactly the same time, because in the Crown's mind, it basically showed a pattern of behavior. Right, and it improves the chances of conviction. Whereas the defense pushed against it. The defense says, no, these cases need to be tried separately because once you have, especially they were concerned about the 16-year-old, because if the 2 cases were tried together, the defense was extremely concerned that the fact that, there appeared to be perhaps some grooming, that if he was twice her age when this allegation of rape occurred. Jacob Hoggard was 32 and she was 16 when this happened. So they were afraid, it would make him look a bad character, and just from that, it would taint the jury's opinion in regards to the other case. So the defense really wanted it to separate. But the judge actually sided with the Crown at the time and said, the cases can be tried together. I have confidence that the jury will base their decision on what the individual facts of both events. And they also, like I said, happened within 2 months of each other, one in September 2016 and the Ottawa case in October, at the end of October 2016.
Some additional context as we start diving into the court proceedings. Due to the graphic nature of the allegations and Hoggard's fame, the Crown issued a publication ban for both women named in the trial. According to the Government of Canada, a publication ban is an order the court makes that prevents anyone from publishing, broadcasting, or sending any information that could identify a victim witness, or other person who participates in the criminal justice system. The publication ban is intended to allow victims, witnesses, and others to participate in the justice system without suffering negative consequences. You'll also hear the accusers called complainants, the preferred term in the Canadian justice system. Now on to the opening statements. The Crown's prosecution, helmed by attorney Jill Witkin, alleged that Hoggard assaulted the Ottawa woman and teenager, despite their pleas for him to stop, as reported here by John Musselman for CTV News.
The Crown alleges that Jacob Hoggard violently sexually assaulted two different women in Toronto hotel rooms. In the Crown's opening remarks to the jury, the court was told that Hoggard, the lead singer of the rock band Hedley, communicated with women over social media apps like Snapchat. Both were invited to the city of Toronto, where the alleged offenses took place in 2016. The Crown told the jury they will hear evidence that the women did not consent, and they repeatedly told the accused to stop. In one incident, the Crown told the jury they will hear evidence from one of the complainants that, quote, she was pinned down, sexually assaulted, and choked.
The Crown told the jury that although Hoggard insisted both complainants gave their consent, he could not substantiate details around the encounter, including their verbal consent. Over the first few days of the trial, the jury heard the testimonies from both complainants and the limousine driver who transported the teenage complainant to and from Hoggard's Toronto hotel room in 2016. The testimonies from the complainants included similar details. Both testified that Hoggard slapped and spit on them using derogatory names. They both testified that he restricted their breathing. In the case of the teenage complainant, she alleged he tried to smother her with a pillow. The Ottawa complainant testified that he choked her with such force that she feared for her life. Hoggard's attorney, Megan Savard, opened the case with the admission that Hoggard did have sex with both accusers, but that it was consensual. She painted Hoggard as an insecure artist, seeking validation in one-night stands and brief sexual encounters. She told the jury that the complainant's actions during the alleged assaults implied consent.
In both cases, the two women were in the hotel with him for hours. They were not what they said, that they were raped and that it was non-consensual. But in court, what Hoggard's lawyer brought up was the fact that they could have left at any time. They weren't bound. The door wasn't locked. He didn't take away their keys or anything like that. They could have left the room. They were in the Ottawa woman's case. There was a point where, he ordered room service. He ordered a sandwich. So she could have signaled for help. So that's what they pointed to. They said, you know what, if it was non-consensual, he wouldn't have done any of that. He would have tried to prevent any contact from anyone. But instead, hotel staff were coming there, He even called a taxi for both the women. In one case, it was a limo to take them home.
According to the defense, sure, Hoggard liked rough sex, but that didn't make him guilty of assault.
But at the same time, Jacob Hoggard has said that his defense has been, he does have a sexual repertoire, and it involves, to a certain degree, calling women degrading names, spitting and slapping, and urination. So, but that's what he does all the time. It's not indicative of a crime. Sure, you might think that he's a disgusting human being, but he's not a criminal.
We'll get into more trial testimony right after this quick break from today's sponsors. Jacob Hoggard took the stand for his defense. In his testimony, he alleged that both complainants used body language and nonverbal cues to indicate consent. When the Crown asked if he could recall any verbal consent, he said he was confident they had given it, but couldn't provide any further details. Again, the defense alleged that because both complainants came willingly, consent was implied.
The defense pointed out that these women, the 16-year-old girl and then the 24-year-old college woman, they came willingly. He brought them. He called them a driver. He bought a train ticket, but they knew. They were texting constantly over a period of several weeks. Even in the Ottawa woman's case, what she said was that yes, she knew she was going to Ottawa and that they would most likely have sex. She was not naive. She was there for a hookup. But what she expected was that there would be consent every step of the way as to what acts would happen.
Hoggard's attorney, Megan Savard, alleged that the teenager fabricated allegations against Hoggard because she was embarrassed that he had used her for sex. Savard said the teenager was merely a fan who fell too hard. The teen had testified that she had seen Hedley perform more than 10 times before she turned 15. According to Savard, she wanted revenge when Hoggard lost interest in her. Savard told the court that when Hoggard called a car for the teen hours earlier than she had anticipated, she became upset and decided to make up the assault. The thing that upset you is the fact that after having sex with this rock star, he called the car to pick you up earlier, Savard said to her during cross-examination. The thing that upset me was that he had non-consensual sex with me where he hit me, I was bleeding, and I continuously told him no, and was crying. That's what upset me, the teenager replied. She said, I was very happy to get out of that room. I couldn't wait to get out of that room. She told the jury that she was, in fact, the one who had ended the encounter early by pretending she was being called in to work. As for the Ottawa woman's claims, Savard took a similar approach, alleging that she too had made up her allegations as a form of revenge against Hoggard after he seemingly lost interest in her after their encounter in Toronto. Savard told the court that although she may have been injured during intercourse with Hoggard, the act was consensual. It was only after sex that the relationship soured. He injured you in the course of consensual sex. You thought he was being inconsiderate not to check in with you, Savard said. It added to the hurt feelings you had as a result of being essentially dropped by this rock star. Savard suggested that the woman also took her story to the press as retribution, because Hoggard stopped paying attention to her. If he wasn't going to keep talking to you, you were going to make up stories about him as a form of revenge, Savard said to her on the stand. The woman responded, if he wasn't going to apologize for raping me, I was going to tell people about it. Reports show that she was incredibly emotional during cross-examination. The defense then reportedly surprised her with a 15-minute taped phone conversation between her and Hoggard, extending her time on the witness stand.
This was a moment in which I thought to myself, oh, the case is turning right here. And let me paint for your audience what happened. The Ottawa woman specifically said that after the incident, that she only spoke to Jacob Hoggard for 30 seconds in a conversation in which she wanted him to apologize and he refused. And that her contact with him after the incident was a quick text accusing him of rape. What she had blocked from her mind and what she was not aware of was that 30-second conversation was actually a 15-minute conversation and that he had recorded it. And and in that conversation, he never apologized, but his voice was soothing. He tried to comfort her, tried to say, I'm sorry you felt this way. I interpreted it very differently. I had a good time. I thought we connected. So he was using those words. He expressed concern for her. And what we know was that that wasn't part of the preliminary trial. That wasn't going to be something that was going to come up. But because the fact that she said that their conversation was only 30 seconds, the defense wanted to say, we have proof that isn't the case. So how the judge handled it was that, okay, She has not heard this before, and I'm not going to put her in the stand and just give her this shock treatment. So I'm going to let her listen to this beforehand, and then she can be questioned on it. So that's what happened.
While the woman was permitted to listen to the recording alone the first time, it was also then played for the jury when she retook the stand. She was in visible emotional distress while the call played and during additional cross-examination. Not only was the woman who had hazy memories of the call caught off guard, so was the Crown. And the defense then alleged something else. They claimed that the woman had lied about her injuries, not only to Hoggard, but to the press. And they pointed to an anonymous recorded interview they said she had given to Judy Trin.
She lost it on the stand. She started crying. She goes, I don't know why I would have said that. I don't recall ever telling the reporter saying that. That didn't happen. So I don't know why I would tell the reporter that.
But once the defense started playing that interview for the jury, Trin realized the defense had made a mistake.
And it was a bombshell to me too, because what I realized watching that was that the defense had actually used the wrong video. At the time, what ended up happening was that I had interviewed a 24-year-old woman, also in silhouette, but I did not mask her voice. But then I interviewed another woman in her 40s who also alleged that she had a similar incident. And she wanted her voice masked because she was very well known in the Toronto area. She was the wife of a music executive. And she did not. So she was the one. And the surgery she was talking about was actually a wrist surgery, but it was completely taken out of context. And you have this Ottawa woman and her credibility is being assailed. And I thought, and she can't, and I know what's happening, but I can't do anything about it.
Essentially, the defense had started questioning the woman about a witness interview that wasn't hers. She became increasingly distraught on the stand, seemingly believing she had significant holes in her memory. But once the error was pointed out to the Crown, the judge made the decision to strike the evidence and the Ottawa woman's response to it from the record. It was an emotionally exhausting moment that Trin hoped the jury could overlook.
The judge told the jury that they were to strike the evidence, not considered at all, that it wasn't her, so they were not to take it into account. But at the same time, part of me just felt like, what if that has ruined her credibility on the stand?
After a drawn-out and emotional trial, the Crown and defense delivered their closing arguments on May 27, 2022. Crown attorney Jill Whitkin told the jury that Hoggard acted out his sexual preferences on the complainants with little regard to their consent or boundaries. He was on a mission to carry through with his sexual preferences in the face of resistance and pain and hurt, she said. She pointed out that the similarities between both encounters strengthened the allegations against Hoggard. Before filing their testimonies, the complainants hadn't met each other, yet they shared strikingly similar stories. The defense attorney, Megan Savard, painted a different picture of Hoggard and his motivations. She concluded that the attention-seeking rock star used sex to validate his insecurities. While he was flawed, she alleged he was not the serial assaulter the Crown had depicted him as. Finally, she reminded the jury that the case was about alleged assaults, not simply about Hoggard's character. Mr. Hoggard is not on trial for breaking hearts or for disrespecting women. He is not on trial for being cavalier with their feelings. He has already admitted and paid the price for that. Deliberations began the following week. The jury deliberations took longer than many had anticipated. The jury of 10 men and 2 women spent 6 days deliberating the 3 counts brought against Hoggard, returning twice to the judge to explain they were deadlocked.
So it was surprising. I think Usually, I've other trials that I've sat through, maybe 4 days, but 6 days is a long time.
During the deliberations, another charge against Hoggard became public. The Crown had charged him with sexual assault causing bodily harm in another incident, this time in Kirkland Lake, Ontario in 2016. This charge was only able to become public once deliberations had started, so as not to taint the jury's outcome in the ongoing trial. A few days later, on June 5th, 2022, the jury finally returned with a verdict. Susana De Silva reported for CBC News.
The jury found Jacob Hoggard guilty of one of 3 charges. He was convicted on 1 count of sexual assault causing bodily harm relating to a woman who was in her early 20s at the time, and not guilty on the same charge relating to a woman who was 16 at the time, and not guilty on a charge of sexual interference for an alleged groping incident with the same woman when she was 15.
So the jury found Hoggard not guilty of sexual interference or sexual assault causing bodily harm against the 16-year-old complainant. The back and forth between the jury and judge and the length of the deliberations shows how challenging it can be to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt in cases of assault.
And the fact that they asked to see the transcripts of, and they asked the judge for clarity, and where it all stemmed from was the Crown prosecutor's strategy. The first witness for the Crown was an expert in a psychologist. Her name was Dr. Laurie Haskell, and she actually dealt with a lot of trauma victims, and including sexual assault survivors. And so what she did was give a mini science lesson to the jury, in which she said, people respond to trauma in very different ways. Some will freeze, some will scream, some will fight back. And you cannot say that depending on their behavior, you can't say that this is consensual or non-consensual. So she did not say specifically, in her opinion, these women were experiencing trauma and that's why they acted as they did. But she just put it out there that in terms of all the sexual assault survivors that she's interviewed, that she's counseled, that they always have varying degrees of reaction, and that there is not, and not to fall into the myths, right? For example, that it is only violent if you fight back, that if you don't fight back, you want it. Do not fall into those myths. That was the reason for her testimony, and she was the first witness. And the jury wanted clarification. Like, can we go back to her words? Like, what did she say?
It wouldn't be until October 2022 when Hoggard returned to court for sentencing. In the meantime, the Ottawa complainant took additional legal action.
The Ottawa woman has filed a lawsuit, a lawsuit near almost $3 million against Jacob Hoggard. She has been traumatized. She hasn't been unable to move forward in her career. She still has these nightmares in which she wakes up and she has these flashbacks.
When Hoggard returned to court for his sentencing hearing, the Crown argued for the harshest sentence. John Musselman summarized the hearing for CTV News, saying that the Crown was seeking 6 to 7 years in prison and calling Hoggard a risk to the public. In addition to the Crown's arguments, the Ottawa woman had an opportunity to present a victim impact statement to the judge. According to CBC News, she said, "I was never the same after that day. A part of me died that day that I will never get back. The assault took away my worth, my privacy, my body, my confidence, and my voice." It would take several days of evaluation and consideration before the judge handed down her sentence. On October 20th, 2022, Jacob Hoggard was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Again, according to CBC News, The judge said she accepted the Ottawa woman's evidence in its entirety and that there are many sides to Jacob Hoggard. Charismatic and talented rock star, manipulative rapist, and caring and loyal friend, husband, father, and worker. She said the full picture must be recognized and considered at sentencing. The prosecution spoke in favor of the sentencing, claiming it as a win for any survivors of sexual assault.
Mr. Hoggard's conviction and sentence sends a message to the community that sexual violence will not be tolerated by our community, by anyone.
Jacob Hoggard has appealed his conviction, however, and is out on bail while the court deliberates.
He did not serve a full day in jail, despite this conviction. The conviction came down before noon, and by 6:30 that night, his lawyers had already secured him bail because they had already filed the appeal, and the judge had said, yes, he's not a flight risk. So he had done probably, other than the fact that in the courtroom, he was handcuffed and taken into custody, he probably did less than 8 hours in jail. And now he is back in Vancouver, where he is living with his wife, and they have a young son, and waiting for the next legal process. His career is over. He's working. His music career is over. The band has disbanded, and he's currently working as a carpenter.
Hoggard is due to appear in court in September 2024 regarding the third sexual assault allegation. And that's all for this episode. As always, I'd love to know what you think about this case. Let me know by joining the conversation on Instagram at CourtJunkie, by tweeting us at CourtJunkiePod, or by emailing us at podcast@CourtJunkie.com. This episode was researched and written by Emma Diehl. Matt Stroud edited. And a special thank you to Judy Trin for helping us with this case. If you'd like to hear these episodes without the ads or hear additional Court Junkie bonus episodes, check out our Patreon options at CourtJunkie.com/support. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.